Today's video is about a code of chivalry. I find this topic very interesting because it's a bit like a way of defining the morals and values that we have. I was looking, I don't know if you've heard of Chat GPT, but I was throwing in random queries into it, basically this language tool which gives you back answers like a search engine, but a lot more advanced. Probably most of you have already heard of it at this stage. But anyway, I was putting in things like values of a knight or like a code of chivalry, and these are like very high values that would have been idealized and it'd be hard to maintain. But I think it's really cool to know what the values are so that you're able to think about them when you're perhaps doing things you're not so certain of, or you're not sure how you should react. A little bit like my theory of the good king, where you think, what would the good king do? And I am hopefully going to make another book in a couple of years, not yet, because I don't think I'm at that stage in my life yet to be able to make comments on morals and that sort of thing. But definitely I'm looking to write a book called The Traits of a Good King, which is basically the idea of how would he feel, what kind of traits would he have, and those traits would be very similar to this code of chivalry I'm about to discuss right now. So there are 7 main points that I suppose you could say a knight would probably have sworn an oath to in this kind of romanticized version of knights in England in medieval times. And I'll call it the seven points first, which I've written down here. So I've made kind of a chart that I'm going to hang up in my room. Probably can't read that too well, but I'll read out the points anyway. The first point is courage. So a knight would have to have courage. The next point is honesty in all things. Then honor, mercy, generosity, helpfulness, and respect. And I think if you were to stick to all of those things in your life, you'd probably end up having very good situations where you're proud of yourself, proud of your stance on things, have your morals intact, and know exactly what your values are. Now, it might be difficult to always be honest, or it might be difficult to always have courage, or to keep your honor intact, or to be merciful to people who've wronged you. But I think these are definitely the values that a good person should have on this earth. So I'm going to start with each part of the code and then break it down. So courage being the first one on the code. Often it is difficult to be courageous or to be brave in difficult situations, but that, I suppose, makes a difference between people who succeed and people who are proud of themselves and are able to see things through. Now, I'm not sure if everyone is born with courage, or is courage something we are born with, but then we kind of lose it as we get older because we realise the world mightn't always accept our points of view on things, and we might become quieter and less courageous and less having the ability to stand up for ourselves. That's possible. Other people are more courageous but mightn't think things through enough. So it definitely is possible to find a balance of both, I think, and to find it's kind of a courage within yourself, within your everyday. Definitely there's some examples where you might think, isn't it better to not be courageous, not to be a hero? For example, if there's like some very dangerous situation and there's someone has a gun to someone's head or whatever, and you don't have a gun. Now, this is from a movie I'm thinking of. Mightn't be something that happens in every day, especially not in America or in countries where there is a lot of violence. But if you don't have courage, I suppose, and if you don't stand up for yourself in dangerous situations, you mightn't feel you have respect for yourself. Now, I can't speak of this personally because I haven't ever been in a dangerous situation, but I can say where I've stood up for my values, or where I have not gone along with things other people were doing simply because I knew what my values were and I had the courage to stick with them. And that's, I think, the way you should look at this on the code, is to have the courage to do what you know is right, to stick to it, to trust in the process, and to believe that things will work out. That's a certain form of courage. And the higher form would be, well, not a higher, but a more physical form would indeed be standing up for yourself in physical situations, not backing down, having a large presence. But definitely the first version of that, where it's all about trusting your process and having belief in yourself and the people around you, definitely I think is a really important part of being a human. The next bit is honesty. Now, we've all heard the term honesty is the best policy. I do believe it is easier to just be honest about things. People will find out if you lie, and if you lie, it's really difficult to keep all those lies intact. People will eventually find out anyway, and then there's just going to be this massive moment of disappointment and shame, and you lose trust of people, and you can't build anything sustainable when you lie. So that one kind of speaks for itself. Is it possible sometimes people don't need to hear the truth on certain topics? Perhaps you don't need to say everything perfectly honestly, but then, at least don't lie. That's what Jordan Peterson would say is, be honest, or at least don't lie. If you're under severe questioning, you can always avoid to answer a question if you think that someone doesn't need to know something specific or it's private to you. That's perfectly fine. But don't lie about a circumstance. Don't lie about where you're at in life, what you're doing, what you have or haven't done, because it just looks poor on you in the long term, and you also know yourself that you've morally kind of gone in the wrong direction. So definitely honesty is a very important part of the code. Honor, again, is a bit like the courage point. You got to have a certain level of respect for yourself and for what you do. Now, this was perhaps more easily defined in this kind of romanticized medieval sense, that if someone calls out your honor, you defend yourself and you fight to the death, or some random thing like this, which obviously, thankfully, is not applicable anymore. But to have honor is, in my opinion, to again stick to your values and to do what you believe is right based on your beliefs. And if someone disagrees with that or calls you out, you can. I think nowadays, instead of becoming violent, you just make sure you stick to your own beliefs. And if someone consistently kind of goes against those or calls you out for them, you just don't spend time with those people anymore. You keep your honor intact. You don't drop to their level. Mercy is another interesting one. Again, I don't know really what the modern equivalent would be compared to the medieval sense, where someone has robbed you and now you're the lord of the lands and you're going to execute this person, or you show him mercy. So mercy, in my opinion, could definitely be giving people a second chance, maybe even a third chance, not a fourth chance in the sense of friendships or whatever, but definitely you give them a few chances. You believe that they can improve themselves, a bit like the Royle subjects concept, where you believe everybody in the world can improve, and therefore you will be merciful with the way you treat them. Generosity, again, if you are a person of wealth, then it's good to be generous, not to be spending anything crazy, but certainly if someone needs your help and you can afford to help them to a degree, definitely do that. Not to be really tight with money if you have enough money to be able to afford that. Definitely generosity applies to that, in my opinion. Helpfulness, which is a bit like kindness, is be able to be that person in the community who's ready to help, who's willing to do little things for people, maybe even big things now and again. Seems a trait that a very good rounded person would have. So I think helpfulness definitely belongs in there. And then on the list again is respect. Now respect is a bit like honor. I think self-respect is super important. Again, brings you back to your self beliefs, your values. If someone is not going to respect you, or you haven't earned their respect, that can be a very poor marker for your future relationship with whoever that person is. If you chase an individual or your friends, or you're trying to, you're always being peer pressured into things and you are in a position where you have no respect, that's not going to be good long term. It's going to lead you down difficult situations. So self-respect is huge in that. And thankfully, in this world, we normally have the autonomy to move away from situations where we're not being respected. And I think respect initially, along with honor and courage, but especially honor and respect, are huge markers for how we're going to live our lives in the future. So if you have a moment right now where you're not being respected and you decide to go down further in that direction with those people, it's just not going to look very good for you long term. Probably the probability is poor, in my opinion. Whereas if you have self-respect intact all the way and you make it seem that you value being respected, then you're going to have a much brighter future with those people, in my opinion. So yeah, that's this code that I've basically written down now. I'm going to hang it up in my room just to kind of look at it now and again, just to remind myself, am I being honest? Am I keeping in line with my values? Am I being helpful when I could be, and generous, etc., etc.? I think it's just a good reminder, and I'm glad to have made this video just to kind of trash out the concept a little bit. So yeah, I hope you're having a good day wherever you are, and take it easy.